You're listening to the Cinema Snarks. I'm Larry,
And I'm Rin.
and we are going to tell you how we really feel. And today we're giving our real opinions on Nightmare Alley and the entire filmography of Guillermo del Toro.
Well, the parts of the filmography we've seen.
Yes, caveat, the movies we have seen.
His general aesthetic as a director, as we have observed it thus far.
Before we get into Nightmare Alley, I think that is something to just note is out of the directors working today, even a lot of the legacy directors, Guillermo del Toro really has a style. He really is distinct. Like you can tell a Del Toro project when it's on screen.
I was watching it and thinking about how this is like he kind of took up the mantle of like Tim Burton. If Tim Burton had like grown and gotten better,
elevated himself.
Yeah, instead of hitting a peak and then being like, "Meh, I don't care anymore." As far as I can tell, that's what's happened to him.
It's been a while since we've gotten a good Tim Burton project. So.
I probably wouldn't mind so much if like at least his style was still a part, right? Like I think I would be a sucker for his aesthetic even if it was not that good a movie, but he's like doesn't even bring his aesthetic into his movies anymore. He got bored with it.
And even when he tries, like sometimes he'll try to re-inject it, but it kind of feels like a lesser director ripping off Tim Burton. Like,
yeah,
he feels like a ripoff of himself at this point.
It's very sad to watch a person who peaked and is now just this sad remnant of themselves. Especially when somebody who loved so much, and still, I still love his movies. The good ones haven't lost their appeal to me in any way, shape, or form. It's not like some of the other filmmakers you watch them again and you're like, oh, not so much.
We've talked a lot on the superhero genre about your love for his Batman films. So.
Yes.
Still to this day,
I wouldn't trust current Tim Burton to do a good superhero film.
That would be very scary. But
we're not here to talk about Tim Burton. We're here to talk about
another
Guillermo
man
Del Toro,
who sometimes it's easy to forget has directed two different superhero franchises in his career.
He directed superhero franchises before directing superhero franchises was cool, man.
He did it. He was on the cutting edge up here. And I think it was all the better for it because you got to do it before studios really mandated what you did. So his vision and his aesthetic and style comes through in his films, including the superhero franchise ones. But I think we can agree, unlike Tim Burton, Del Toro, he's over 20 years in his career at this point, almost at 30 years since his debut. He's not lost his touch. He has not gone downhill. He has not peaked.
I might argue that Nightmare Alley is his best yet.
Okay, so Nightmare Alley is actually a remake of a 1947 film. Ren, have you seen that original Nightmare Alley?
I have not, but that 1940s time period sounds about right for that film noir genre.
Yeah, directed by Edwin Golding. And that also was an adaptation of a novel, which was published in 1946. So they got to work on that original film. They adapted that immediately.
So it was like the shit when the book came out, and they're like, let's do it. Like, this is back in the days when books were still like super hip and cool, and lots of people read books.
So the premise of Nightmare Alley takes place in 1940s New York. Imagine that. Down on his luck, Stanton Carlisle.
All right, let's be specific. It's Buffalo, New York.
Hey!
Just to be clear, not that city you're thinking of. It's the little one that everybody forgets about unless it's football season and we're being made fun of for being silly.
In 1940s Buffalo, New York.
This is relevant, and I'm going to get into it. But go ahead, keep going.
Down on his luck, Stanton Carlisle endears himself to a clairvoyant and her mentalist husband at a traveling carnival. Using newly acquired knowledge, Carlisle crafts a golden ticket to success by swindling the elite and wealthy. Hoping for a big score, he soon hatches a scheme to con a dangerous tycoon with help from a mysterious psychiatrist who might be his most formidable opponent yet. The film has an all-star cast that includes Bradley Cooper, Cate Blanchett, Rooney Mara, and Toni Collette.
This is the sort of cast where if you're trying to like recommend the movie to a person, you can just start listing off the actors and eventually you'll get to one where they're like, oh, okay, I'll check that out.
So it also includes, some Del Toro mainstays, such as
have your Ron Perlman.
He had to find his way in.
Good for him.
Willem Dafoe.
You don't really see him in anything else. So I'm glad he has that adorable.
Yes.
He's okay. He's like the Johnny Depp to Tim Burton, but he doesn't like overuse him in that same way, and that it's like almost become a little bit stale. I don't feel that way. I've heard that before where people are like, oh, it's overused, but I think I'm just a fan of Johnny Depp one way or the other. What are you gonna do?
Him and Helena, which obviously went a little bit more downhill after the divorce, but yes. So how did you feel about Nightmare Alley, Ren?
So I heckin' loved Nightmare Alley. I thought it was so good. It is easily my favorite of the Best Picture nominees that I've seen so far. And I think it is probably my favorite Guillermo Del Toro movie. I really, really liked Crimson Peak. I also really, really liked Pan's Labyrinth. But this movie is like from beginning to end just incredible, sumptuous, perfect details all the way around. Like there is not a moment where my eyeballs weren't feasting on everything. The tone was just perfect throughout. It had that slow film noir burn to it without it feeling slow. You had just everybody's performances were just fantastic throughout. I love the way that the plot rolls around by the end, and I'm like, this is storytelling. I also like it's just there's so many fun aesthetics that he was playing with here, like starting with the fucking crazy circus. Like there's so much like yes, please give me a Guillermo del Toro style circus. Is that perfect? He finds the beauty in the grotesque in the way that I don't think any other director really quite nails in the same way that he does. And I think a circus is a perfect vehicle for grotesque beauty. And then once you move into this sumptuous version of Buffalo, New York, with every little Art Deco detail down to each little prop on every single fucking person's desk, it's like it's breathtaking the amount of work and detail and attention that was put into Nightmare Alley. So I just like Patrick was not watching it with me, but I literally had to like grab him and be like, I just need you to look at this thing. It's
look at the screen.
Like look at the sconces on the wall. Look at the pattern in her office on the like cabinet. She's got these weird kind of symbolic, almost uterus things on her wall. It's like, so good. And like I also think that what I loved about this is it was an homage to film noir without being like, but it was updated and expanded and was like the next level. Like everyone understood the assignment basically. Like watching Cate Blanchett play, she is the femme fatale from the beginning. You like fucking know. Oh no, there's your femme fatale. But she's like slinking her way across the screen with danger in her fucking eyes. Like this lady again understands the assignment, but they did it without any of these characters becoming caricatures. which I think it could have easily kind of moved that way with any less gifted actors than you have in this film. I think Bradley Cooper, I understand why he didn't get a Best Actor nomination, because this is not a big performance, which sucks, because it does seem like with the Oscars, if men are going to get an Oscar nominee, it's got to be big. Like they don't tend to nominate the like nuanced performances as much. Just generally, there needs to be a certain degree of yelling and screaming. But his journey, it really starts to come through as you kind of get towards the end, like that as it like really plays out and everything is unraveling. That's where you really get those incredible moments from Bradley Cooper. I think he does a good job of like keeping it grounded and playing this character that is kind of a villain, but also kind of the hero. And like, you don't necessarily dislike him or think that he's kind of, it's very much that old, the Greek concept of the hubris, right? Like he like kind of messes with the gods, right? The magician, the mentalist at the beginning, he like warns him about like toying with this power, and he's warned multiple times, and he basically screws himself over because he gets too big for his britches. It is at its core is kind of like a moral story.
And this is why I'm so excited for Pinocchio, because once again, this is what Guillermo does in most all of his films, is he crafts a kind of moral fairy tale into this really dark kind of feeling.
I did like a little bit of research on Guillermo Del Toro before we did this, so I kind of had a bigger concept of what his background was and why, just to know. And Guillermo del Toro is very Catholic. He is an ex-Catholic, and I identify. I am culturally Catholic, and I think Guillermo del Toro would understand that. Like he doesn't necessarily believe in God, but it's really hard to get rid of all of those traditions and those morals and those stories and those feelings that being Catholic really emphasizes in a way that some other sects of Christianity are just not the same. Like I certainly think there's like the dark sumptuousness that feels very Catholic, that just like on its own. But I mean, like at the very core, there's so much of it is like this these feelings of guilt and punishment.
And it's even maybe that's why he's so good at visionary stuff too, is because for all of its guilt that Catholicism and fear that Catholicism really plays on, also beautiful. I mean, say what you will, but the temples, the work that is done. I mean,
if you're going internationally and you're not looking at churches, like you don't need to be a Catholic to go and look at Notre Dame and go, holy crap, this is gorgeous. Yeah. I mean, like at the end of the day, like historically, for a great period of time, the Catholic Church was the most economically powerful entity in the world, and they were the ones who put all the money into the art. So we have this very, very rich collection of gorgeous art that is very biblical. So that definitely makes sense that he pulls from that a lot in his work. But yeah, this one definitely had that Catholic guilt and that like moral story going. But I think that it's nice too, because it also seems like he has that outsider perspective on the Catholic guilt and all of these things, and like it almost seems unfair to a point as you're watching these things happen to him. Like he has it coming and he kind of brings it upon himself, but also there's plenty of people in the movie who are never punished for things they probably should have been.
A lot of the people, this is one of those films where most of the people we're following aren't good people necessarily. Right. They're all conflicted. I mean, I guess you could say Rooney Mara's character is pretty. Yes. She's the best of them in the film.
She's supposed to be your little virgin.
Yeah, she's the sweet one. But everybody else is
the virgin and the Madonna and the virgin. Yeah, then you have the Madonna and the whore. That's the Catholic thing, which you have right there almost immediately with your Toni Collette Blanchett and your Rooney Mara.
Yes. And so if that's not your jam, you probably will be miserable because our lead character has you conflicted, as we just said. We're following this man. He's doing kind of shitty things and is pretty selfish. Like, he's not a good person per se. He's not downright evil. He's not horrible.
There's a sense of survival.
Yes. Like, because we meet him and he's, down on his luck. Well, granted, after doing something not good, he starts his story off with an
it's
evil
very suspicious situation. Yeah, even like they reveal the full aspects of it throughout the movie, but right off the bat, you're like, this guy did some shit.
Yeah. But then you have that Robin Hood aspect where, I mean, he's taking it to these rich a-holes who are not good people either.
Charming as hell.
Especially, what's his name? Jenkins. His character, the main like tycoon guy, is a horrible person, as we start to learn.
Horrible.
As he reveals himself more through his story, he is terrible.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh yeah, no, okay, you need to get screwed over, sir. Kate Blanchett's character, as you said, you can tell from the start something's going on with this woman. She is not a good person either. Nobody, only Rooney. She's the only like innocent little person amongst it all. She just wants to be a weirdo amongst her people in the circus. She just wants to be a little circus folk. But oh my god, I just need to say, Kate Blanchett stole the whole damn show for me. It's not hard. She often does in anything she's in. She often steals the show for me.
I don't know how she does it. It's incredible the transformations you can see that woman.
Yeah, I mean, we saw her in fellow Oscar nominee Don't Look Up, and she's just this vapid, like ridiculous talk show. And then here she just gives this really sultry, amazing performance. And she just lights up the screen and she looks amazing in the film too.
So good. I mean, everything looks amazing. Like every single costume, every single, again,
I'm so glad.
Visual delight.
That's why I'm glad it got those, beneath the line nominations, the production designs, those type of design.
I've seen a lot of the things on the production design list, and no question in my mind, Nightmare Alley should be winning that. Just like the level of detail all the way around is just incredible. Kudos to that team, because they were not sleeping for a second on each and every shot. The cinematography too was like gorgeous. It was just, it was incredible.
And that's and it gives off that, and that's what he does well again in all of his films. Though, he's not the cinematographer, but he is the director who gives the note and gives the cinematographer what he wants. And it communicates. But he is able to create this atmosphere just through cinematography, through color grading, through the sets. It all adds into this really amazing immersive atmosphere. He does it so well. I don't know many directors who can match Del Toro in that aspect of just immersing you purely based on what it is you're seeing. And Nightmare Alley 100% just evokes that.
Nightmare Alley makes me be like, just give him all the money he wants to just keep building incredible worlds, please, because until he reaches some sort of like capacity, I can't imagine anything. It was just so beautiful. And of course, I also have to mention, the movie is set in Buffalo, which I am from Buffalo. I grew up there. And you don't get a lot of love. It's like a very working class town. Mostly people just remember that we went to the Super Bowl 4 times and lost 4 times in a row.
In a row. Yeah. We better have that in a row.
To be clear, we were killing it for 4 seasons. The story that I always tell is that when I was in like kindergarten, when they were winning the Super Bowl, and then I went to a Catholic school. So we had to wear uniforms every day. But when the Buffalo Bills were playing the Super Bowl the day before, we all got to wear our Buffalo Bills gear on that Friday. And then the first year that the Buffalo Bills were not in the Super Bowl, this one girl in my class came to school without her uniform on, wearing her Buffalo Bills gear. And she got in all kinds of trouble because she wasn't wearing a uniform. And this poor girl, she's in like 2nd grade, for as long as she can remember, the Buffalo Bills have been in the Super Bowl. So when it was the Super Bowl, she just assumed this is what you do. This poor little girl. Anyways, Buffalo, however, was a huge hub during the 1920s. They hosted the World's Fair. Basically, very, very boring history of it. The Erie Canal was built. It diverted a lot of the commerce back down to New York City and basically fucked us. But right, we're gonna be weird and bitter about it. But around the Industrial Revolution, Buffalo was huge. It was a giant city. It was just as important as New York City. And around the 1920s is when you have a lot of this Art Deco decor. It's usually the 1920s through to the 1940s or so. But this Art Deco style is prevalent throughout Buffalo. Like if you go to Buffalo and you want to look at the architecture, there are some incredible pieces there. Their city hall is one of the most incredible pieces of architecture ever. And Guillermo Del Toro also set his brilliant horror film Crimson Peak in Buffalo because the man has done his goddamn research. And he understands that Buffalo, if he wants to have a beautiful, decadent Art Deco world, Buffalo makes sense historically for the time periods that he's choosing for this aesthetic that he has chosen. So I loved that. I just absolutely, my heart was like, oh, this man, he understands me. Gets it. Right. And like, obviously, I'm going to be a little bit extra partial to his aesthetic because I grew up in this city where this is like, you know, and also my family's a whole bunch of architects. And so my mom always jokes about how like when she was kids, when they went on vacation, they went and like looked at buildings. And she thought that was what everybody did on vacation when they were kids, was they went to go look at buildings.
Yeah.
But anyways, that is one thing I did want to point about Guillermo del Toro. Grim countdown. Sorry. Very enthusiastic also about Guillermo del Toro in Buffalo, New York.
Hyped. Well, how did you feel about the rest of our cast when it came to Rooney and Tony and all the rest of them?
Okay, so I really liked everyone. I thought, honestly, they're probably maybe one of the weakest points. Honestly, Toni Collette wasn't bad. But I don't know if there was much of a strong like character to Xena. It's hard when you see like Kate Blanchett and she's very clearly this femme fatale. Like I wasn't quite sure exactly what the like archetype that Xena is supposed to be. I think I'm almost liked her too much and she was too nice, I think. I don't know. Whereas everyone else is kind of complicated. And I don't think there's any failing on the part of Toni Collette. I think she did a very believable, understandable job with it. It made sense with the character and the world that was built. But I mean, it was just, you know, compared to every other person, it felt like she was in just a little bit different movie. But everyone else, I thought was really incredible. David Strathairn as the like crumbling mentalist, just like falling apart. I thought he was really good. I loved my little Mary Steenburgen just for like a hot second.
I mean, she has a moment that is quite impactful because you're just like, oh
yeah,
okay,
oh yeah. And then the Molly Cahill, Rooney Mara, she's fine. I mean, that is you want to talk about Pollyanna characters. She is just, there's nothing bad about her. She is very meh all the way around, as that character trope typically is. I don't think that is, again, any fault on the part of Rooney Mara. It just is the nature of the beast that you created when you pick like this very specific genre.
Yeah.
And goddamn, Kate Blanchett stole the show. So then everybody like next to her is like, boring.
Right from the get-go, right from her being in that damn audience of their show, you're like,
villain some more with her little gun.
With that tiny little gun in her bed.
Great. I thought Willem Dafoe was great. He's always great.
He's great. And he's perfect for that role that they gave him here. I mean, yeah. So do you think they transitioned well from circus to, you know, his like suave mentalist life?
I think so. I mean, I don't think there's much of a transition. I think it goes straight from circus, dirty, grotesque to sumptuous, beautiful, gorgeous world. Um, I do think it manages to slide back into that grotesque pretty quickly at the end when it needs to,
act, yeah.
as necessary. Right? It was like, there it is, Guillermo Del Toro.
We can't go the entire film without this. No.
Other thing to keep in mind about Guillermo del Toro that I learned, and it like explains a lot about his aesthetic and a lot about like why I feel like I really enjoy his movies particularly and identify with them, is that he got started as a makeup artist. That was the very beginning of his career, was in makeup, and he trained with Dick Smith, who is basically like one of the greatest makeup artists of all time. Like they teach you about him when you go to makeup school, special effects makeup school, because he created all kinds of incredible makeup designs. And so he trained directly under this incredible makeup artist. And it then makes a lot of sense as you then watch his films and you're like, oh yeah, this guy gets like how much better it is to have those practical effects, and how much more effective it is, and how to make them good and how to make them awesome. I find, so one of the things is I studied makeup design. I do a lot of makeup artistry and stuff, and one of the weird things that you do as a makeup artist is you research wounds. You just like are generally fascinated with somebody's like wound. You find like pictures of it and like you want to just like see what it looks like. Because you want to like be able to build these things in real life, things that look just like a gaping wound. And I think that, there's sometimes he really likes those bashed in faces. Like that was the moment. I was like, so when I watched Pan's Labyrinth, I was in I think I was in college, maybe. Okay. It was like the summer older, during college. At least than I was. I was older. I was definitely in my teens, and I was in a phase where I was just getting really, really high and watching movies, and that was like the thing I wanted to do. And I thought, oh, Pan's Labyrinth, a lovely fantasy, and I was super stoned. And then it gets to the part of the movie where his face gets bashed in with a bottle, and I was like, oh no. This is not
David Bowie Labyrinth.
This is not the delight I was expecting.
Oh, okay.
So that is permanently imprinted on my brain.
And I so appreciate it, even down to this film, Shape of Water, no matter what it is, still in the age of so much CG. Even in horror itself has gone in and out of CG practical. He is so practical heavy in everything. And I appreciate it so much.
And honestly, the generations after us will also appreciate it, because nobody's going to watch a Guillermo del Toro movie in 20 years and be like, some rough 2022 CG.
Yeah, we were talking about this before, and I guess this could just lead into our general Guillermo discussion. But even watching Pan's Labyrinth in 2022, it's some of the most horrifying designs still, and they look amazing. The creatures in that film look amazing because they're all practical. Like all of the practical stuff remains iconic because it just looks so good. But yeah, Nightmare Alley, for me, it dragged just a bit through that second act as we're getting to that third act, and it's, we're moving along and going over this stuff with this guy. But I definitely think it is.
I could totally, if you weren't like, oh my God, this is a set. If your eyes were around the screen in excitement, I could set the drag in the middle.
But wow, that third act, I loved the third act. I thought it brought the film back together so beautifully and such a great fashion.
It's so sudden. It goes from like it's like if it was slow, it's like
And that's kind of what we've come to expect again, because that's he does that often enough, or at least recently, I'd say, because The Shape of Water does that to an extent too. It's all this romance. You have the weirdness there because you're dealing with a fish man and this woman kind of falling in love with him throughout the film. So you have weirdness present, but it starts to get gruesome in that third act of the film where people are shooting and he's like biting things or like doing crazy stuff. And they're like, whoa, okay. I thought I was in for this like lovely kind of light fantasy romance.
No.
There, that ain't it though. But you say you think that Nightmare is your new favorite Del Toro film. What was your previous favorite then?
Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah,
I'm a fantasy nerd.
It's my favorite.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. I like the makeup and everything is just like incredible. I think it's a tough choice. But the thing with Nightmare Alley was that like there is so much more on the screen. I think the Art Deco set design is what like sets it up and above for me. Is that like there's not a moment in Nightmare Alley where I'm not like. And there's even like I think there's partially that also there's like a little bit of childish ambiguousness in Pan's Labyrinth. It's also like so I think the other thing is Pan's Labyrinth is like ultimately fucking heartbreaking.
I mean, it's that
Nightmare Alley is not. Nightmare Alley is like ties it back around.
It's
and it's
a
like
sad, like it's kind of a sad ending, but not. Again, you. The character is so conflicting, and everyone in the film is so conflicted that you feel like, okay. And Pan's Labyrinth, you're following this child who has been in this horrible situation, is stuck with this abusive stepfather in this war. And the end is just sad. It's just heartbreaking. And no matter how you interpret that ending, it's just devastating.
Nightmare Alley is not devastating by the end. Nightmare Alley, again, it's like a moral story. Like by the end, you're like, and that's what happens.
Yes, that is what happened.
Oh, so good. That final line. Oh, it's so good. And I didn't have that reaction when I watched Pan's Labyrinth. I think when I was watching Pan's Labyrinth, I was just like weeping and was like, I don't know, she might just be dead.
She's just dead.
She might just be dead and in heaven now. This is horrible. Why is the world so bad? And then with Nightmare Alley, it was like, yes, this is what I was born for. Yes.
Yeah.
Storytelling. Oh, yeah. I think it just like tweaked my nerd to the like theater storytelling, like film nerd in me all the way around.
We talked about it a little bit because it was a first time watch for you recently. We have Crimson Peak, an underrated film that people, I think what happened with Crimson Peak is the way it was marketed, it still had that style. I don't really know what people were anticipating, but I think they were anticipating more of a straight up horror ghost story type of film.
It fucking kills. Like that shit is terrifying. That's all I need in my life. If you're gonna tell me a ghost story, like I'm gonna need those jump scares and those terrifying ghost moments. That's a ghost story to me.
Yeah. It's there, and I mean, I don't know. It was more gothic horror than people wanted. I don't know. I don't understand, but people didn't love it. It's at like 60 something on the tomato meter.
We're ready for the whole twisty part. I don't want to like ruin it for people because I think everyone should see it. I think Crimson Peak is a cult classic that just needs to like get there. I
have been praising it for years.
Yeah. Mary, you were right. You were right.
And that's another one where you're just watching and it's just like, God, these sets are stunning and gorgeous. The costume.
Right. I was already hooked when it was like in Buffalo. That like it literally says Buffalo this year or whatever.
The score is amazing. The cinematography. And another maybe underrated thing is he's just really good at casting.
Yes. And he doesn't just rely on the same actors over and over again.
Other than Ron. Ron is his one little
and
save.
Like every director needs their little like signature item. And Ron Perlman. I actually don't think Ron Perlman is in Crimson Peak.
I don't think so either. See, and he's not in everyone. If he's not, I don't think he's in Shape of Water either. Like if he's not,
he doesn't shoehorn him in if he's not
It's not like James Gunn with his brother Sean Gunn. But yes,
you're a weird weasel thing. It's great.
Yes. Oh, you could, we'll put you in the costume. But no, he's so good because you think about these actors, and a lot of them they take place before they're like really big. Like Tom Hiddleston was on the cusp, and Jessica Chastain was on the cusp.
Yes.
And oh god, what's her name? The Wachowski, not Wachowski.
Marissa.
It's a really
the Wachowski. I think she had been in like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, so she hasn't done as much since, but like those actors were perfect for that film, all of them, and they all understood the assignment. They got it, and they delivered
the assignment. Yes, I think. Okay, here's another thing I really love about Guillermo Del Toro as I'm like watching he has a style, but he also like he likes to play around with very different types of films. Like he's not just making horror films. He's not just making fantasy films. He kind of finds ways to incorporate these themes in this style, his very unique kind of like beautiful grotesque style. I think that's the best way to describe it. But and apply it to all these different things. And like he doesn't have anything else in like maybe Nightmare Alley is kind of similar to Crimson Peak, which is not in the same way. Like Crimson Peak is absolutely, it's a gothic horror story, just a full on like classic horror, rolled around and has ghosts involved, and it's so many of these elements like literarily that you know what he's doing.
Yeah, if you put them together, you see the similarities. You see, okay, the same man worked on these, but they're not. Nightmare Alley has a lot more like drama to it, in a lot of ways it's more of a dark drama, where Crimson Peak is not. It's not a drama.
So it's not like quite as like, so Stanley Kubrick, right?
Yeah,
every single one of his movies is like totally different from the others, but he still has a distinct style.
Yes.
Right, like 2001 Space Odyssey is a science fiction film. The Shining is a horror film. Clockwork Orange is like a weird crime thriller film. He definitely traipses just all around in the absurd, in the darkness of humanity, and similar sort of themes, but they're definitely all very distinct different genres. And I think Guillermo del Toro, I think he kind of does the same thing. Like there's like Shape of Water is nowhere near the same.
Then those two films that are kind of similar are split by this romance, this like period romance that has the weirdness. Like we said, that's the thing. He's gonna take this different genre. He's gonna make it a little bit weird. He's gonna Guillermo it up a little bit, but still keep the quintessential. The themes of it. It's still a very sweet movie. It's about outsiders. It's about being an outsider. That's what The Shape of Water mostly
have very just generally though a gothic theme going through there. So I watched his first film. So if anybody wants to have a little like retrospective with Guillermo del Toro, HBO Max, in anticipation of Nightmare Alley, basically put all of his films on HBO Max. So you can watch Kronos, which is like his first movie. And it is weird. you can see the like baseline of it, but so Kronos is basically kind of like a gothic vampire story. And then you have Mimic, and Mimic is essentially like Frankenstein. And now I'm kind of like looking through obviously Hellboy is its own sort of thing.
And have you seen Devil's Backbone, Ren?
I have not seen Devil's Backbone. Is it a Western?
It's another kind of gothic horror film.
Interesting.
It's really good.
You're like, yeah. See, we're noticing his pattern. Gothic's definitely.
So the only one that fully just leaves anything gothic behind, the only film that he does not incorporate that darkness in at all is Pacific Rim. That is the outlier, kind of. It's fun, it's big, it's a little bit goofy, but it's still good. It just Pacific Rim does not incorporate the
bravery on that, right? I'm like, I'm gonna try something totally effing different.
I want to do a kaiju movie, a Japanese kaiju movie is what I want to do. So that's what we're gonna do.
I think that's another thing that I appreciate about Guillermo del Toro is he's a film nerd's director. Like you can tell that he just really likes certain types of films and is like, I want to do a kaiju. I want to do like a gothic horror. I want to do a film noir. Like
and you can see that again, especially in Shape of Water, where we have that moment where they just go into the dance. You know, they just have this moment where they go into this classic dance. It goes into black and white. He just, yeah, he loves film. And you can feel it.
Totally. And right, we've talked about how at the Oscars they always like to nominate whoever like makes film nerds feel good about themselves by making a movie about movies. And Guillermo del Toro manages to tweak and stroke my little film nerd, film history lover without blatantly making a movie about making movies.
Yeah,
like I think I appreciate it. Every movie that he does, you can tell that he lovingly studied and researched and like learned all about the genre and the type of film that he wanted to make.
There's never feel like he's making something he doesn't want to make either. Yes. Like even in his superhero days, even when he did those superhero films, Hellboy was a big passion project for him. He actually wanted a third one. Like he loved doing those Hellboy movies. He got to do the makeup. He got to do the weird creatures and all of that craziness. Even Blade 2, which is great. Honestly, I think Blade 2 is just as good as the first Blade, and I love the first Blade. Like again, he's a natural fit for those two superheroes too, because hello, it's a vampire. And it's this monster with a heart of gold, this like big honking beast with a heart of gold. That's Guillermo right there. So even those films, it never feels like he's just like, okay, fine, like I'll do it. Like, yeah, he produces, he passes that stuff and just produces it for other people. If he's like, no thanks.
In my research on Guillermo del Toro, so he made Mimic in 1997, and then he just kind of like fucked off because he didn't like the Hollywood system. Like as a result of doing Mimic, he was like, I don't think Mimic is bad at all. It doesn't have quite the as much as the Guillermo del Toro touch that I think. I mean, there's certainly things like he certainly brings in his Spanish speaking characters and that bit of culture. There's certainly religious aspects to it. Like parts of it take place in a church, and there's certainly Guillermo del Toro in it. But yeah, he basically was like upset about it, and then so he just didn't really want to work in Hollywood, and that's why he made Devil's Backbone with his own independent production company. And then they basically Hollywood is like, oh my god, we love you, please come back,
this is amazing, actually come back.
Yes, oh god, please. And he was like, okay. And then he made Blade 2, which is just fine. It's hard because Blade 1 is very good, and so everything after that is like, at least he didn't make Blade 3.
At least
not for that.
So have that bullshit on it.
And it's interesting looking at his body of work. It's actually not incredibly lengthy. It's not, he's no Woody Allen just cranking them out every single year.
Or even like Steven Spielberg, who just, is producing 2 films a year at some points in his career, or even recently over the past decade. It's like Spielberg is cranking films out.
Having fun, right? Like he likes to, it seems like he likes to do other things. He likes to produce things. He likes to write things and have his own little.
And he writes most of his films. He's a writer quite often on his films. He's only won the 2 Oscars, and they were both for The Shape of Water. He won for Best Director, and then he was obviously a producer, so he won the Best Picture Oscar when it won. And the only other time he was nominated was Pan's Labyrinth, which was cool to see a foreign film get nominated for Best Screenplay way back in 2006, because that is still, oh my gosh, a foreign film for screenplay. They probably can't even read the words, and they nominated it. Academy.
So Guillermo del Toro, Inarritu, and one other guy. Who's the other one?
It's like the three amigos, they call them.
Three amigos.
It's from Mexico. It's Inarritu, Del Toro, and Alfonso Cuarón.
Yes. And those guys are just killing it in the foreign films,
Yeah.
breaking into it. They
That's,
seem to like have a sense of what we like here.
wow. And they're also
Like
different
what the
too.
voters for the Oscars like.
That's yeah, that's what's cool is they're all three very different filmmakers. Like Del Toro would never make Roma, like
Yes.
that's not
But
for him.
it also doesn't seem like any of them are making films they don't want to make,
Yeah.
right? There's some things that is like Oscar. Like, let's all be real. I much as I liked King Richard and I really enjoyed the story of learning about Serena Williams and Venus Williams, like those are incredible fucking women. That is fucking Oscar bait. That is 100%. Will Smith was like, I'm gonna win an Oscar.
Yeah, you could just
to make
feel
this.
it.
Yeah, honestly,
And
I liked Fences a lot too. That also was Oscar bait. It's like you can tell when sometimes people are like, "We're gonna make this film, and we're gonna win Oscars with it,"
well,
but it doesn't ever feel like that is what they're trying to do.
no.
None of those
Yeah.
guys.
No, and I
They're
think
trying to make a cool, interesting film that is art. They really
like I
do.
don't think Guillermo del Toro went out to make an Oscar-winning film with Nightmare Alley. He made a film he wanted to make, and here it is at the Oscars again. He's actually, I believe, the first director to get his to win Best Picture and Director, and they get a nomination for his very next picture for Best Picture. So that's amazing. But yeah, you don't get that sense, and with the other two either. Iñárritu does some weird stuff, so I don't really think
Birdman.
Birdman, The Revenant, having Leonardo DiCaprio out here eating raw meat, stuff like that. Yeah, but yeah, no, I think Del Toro is great. Keep it coming. I'm so excited for his first animated film. I'm so excited that it's stop motion animation.
As if I needed any more reasons to love Guillermo del Toro. I don't think until we decided we were going to do this that I realized how much I loved Guillermo del Toro until I was like, oh my God. He's so good. Oh my God. That's why it's so good.
And it's so great to see directors that just have such a style to them, no matter what they do, no matter what they touch.
So much
authentic
style. I love it.
Feels authentic to them, and they have a keen sense. I guess that's it seems to just be innate to some people of he knows what makes good film, and he knows what he likes, and he's able to execute it to mastery level perfection over and over again.
He wants to delight his audiences, and he fucking does it.
And we love him for it. We love him. That's why we're always excited and ready for a new Del Toro film.
His stuff never feels narcissistic. It never feels like I am making a Guillermo del Toro film, right? There's never any it just feels like he wants to frame his stories. He wants to make his stories look good. He wants to make his actors look good, right? I think we could probably safely find a shitty performance from each of the actors that has been in movies, unless it's Cate Blanchett.
even when she's bad, no, she isn't.
Even when she's bad, she isn't. Stop it.
No, and that matches up so perfectly. Everything I've seen of him, on camera, he is just so a lot of the film community calls him Tito Guillermo, Uncle Guillermo.
Oh,
because he just
he seems so nice.
And everybody seems to just love him. I think that's why he has this resurgence in the awards community, because Hollywood loves him.
Yeah, he also doesn't seem he seems supportive of other people. He seems like he spends that's part of why he doesn't have this huge body of work, is that he spends his time lifting other people up, and he could have directed Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and he probably would have done a better job of it. But he was like, "No, I'm gonna write this script, and then I'm gonna hand this off to someone else and let them have their opportunity to direct something." He does all kinds of directs television shows and things, and just he's willing to. He doesn't seem to have any ounce of self-importance, and he absolutely could.
See, this is how you know he loves it too. Like, look at him. He's out here. He loves this Pro Hunters series. It's an animated, series that it's a fantasy series. Tell it's just a project he loves. It's been going on. But that's another great thing about him is he is obviously a big name in the horror genre, and he produces a lot of small horror films, like these little horror movies that may or may not have gotten made. We don't know, but he just has I think that just shows his spirit of the types of projects too that he really funds and works on. It's stuff that reflects him and his style and what he's passionate about, and getting some new folks in the ring, because again, horror often is a gateway for Hollywood in general. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you have it. We are fans of Tito Guillermo.
Yes, we love GDT. We love him. And
so we haven't been very snarky about Guillermo del Toro, because what is there to be snarky about? How he is a big teddy bear that makes beautiful films and supports other artists, and you're a jerk if you don't like him.
He's an artiste without being a douche.
I would love to have a fight with somebody about Guillermo del Toro being not good. Oh, that was Patrick was like, oh, I was talking to someone and they were telling me that they thought Guillermo del Toro was overrated. And I was like, what? He was like, oh, I thought you agreed with that. I was like, absolutely not.
No, that is slander and preposterous. How dare you?
Who the fuck said that?
Bring them to me now.
Name so I can argue with them about that.
Yeah, that
what overrated means.
If anything, even with all his accolades, he's underrated.
Underrated. He's only won like a couple of Oscars.
Yeah,
he was vastly underrated for like decades of his career.
Yeah, for a long time. Just now, Hollywood is getting it.
Argue that he was overrated until like 2017. Yeah. Like, if you really didn't think Shape of Water was that good.
And I think it's just people who don't love Shape of Water suddenly like, oh, Guillermo is overrated. Like, no, hold on, sir.
I'll say, and here's the thing, I could understand a person just like not liking Shape of Water because it's weird and it's just like makes people uncomfortable. I totally get it. The weird bestiality thing is like weird.
Well, I love it. It's weird. I'm not the bestiality part, but
I tend to love. I mean, that definitely was the way it just came off just now.
So it's like shit. Let me be clear. I'm an animal activist rather than somebody who advocates for bestiality.
Animal's not like a lover of
No. They cannot consent to your behaviors, humans. Let's not get crazy.
But that being said, Guillermo del Toro, I could understand why you wouldn't like Shape of Water, but like with any understanding of his body of work and just like what it takes to create a film and like the history of film and just look at his films, like even if you don't like the plots that much, you cannot like fault this man for his attention to detail and design and the beautiful films that he makes. Yes. Yeah. I could see people just not liking his weird stories. Sure. That's fine. If that's not your bag, that's not your bag. But like that man is a fucking film craftsman.
Yes. We love to hear it.
You can dislike it, but he is a fucking filmmaker. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that was our review for 2021's Academy Award nominated Nightmare Alley, as well as our discussion of Guillermo del Toro as a director and some of his body of work. I hope you all enjoyed this podcast. If you did, make sure to leave a rating for us wherever you're listening and a review. It certainly helps us be seen, and we will be a little less snarky with you if you help us out. Maybe.
Sure.
Ren, where can they find you to come straight at you?
Come at me on Twitter. I probably won't get your at, so do it at Ren Manley. And then if you want to actually get my attention, I am also on Instagram at RennyPoo13.
Perfect. And you can follow us on both Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Snarks. And you can find me at Chili Boy YG on Twitter and Chili Boy Productions, both on YouTube and on Instagram. Well,
You can follow my Letterboxd.
Yes.
It's under Cinema Snarks. So you get my reviews under Cinema Snarks, but you'll get Larry's if you visit his LC Screen Talk.
Yeah, that one is still LC Screen Talk because you have to have
LC
premium
Screen
to change
Talk,
your name.
properly rebranded.
It's great. I don't want to pay for premium, so I can't change my name. Great. Yes, follow along, especially as Ren specifically plays lots of catch up leading up to the Oscars. As you can see her ratings for all of the Oscar nominees coming up.
Doing okay. And then all the nominees. And I was like, fuck.
Still doing okay. It's still a little bit, Yeah.
But still, I like last year I had like over half of them before the nominations came out, like done, and we were great. Yeah. It's a little harder this year because a lot more of the stuff didn't go straight to streaming. Like it was pretty easy in 2021 because it was like, oh great, my living room and watch TV, what everybody's doing these days. Although I will say, luckily, the films this year that I have to watch are not uniformly depressing, which is exciting.
Oh, Ren. Well, thank you for listening along, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.